Hey folks, it's Cloud Stream. You've got Sadesh. Today I'm really lucky to have some time with Steve. Steve and I work together, so disclosure back in the day, he's now in the thick of things, helping large organizations and some smaller ones sort out sort of their spend on technology, and so he gets into really interesting conversations and gets to meet with, I'll call them titans of technology. That's probably true?
Yeah, I think you nailed
it. Well, Steve, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks out there, and look forward to kind of having some more discussions here.
Yes, Sadesh, great to see you again, and really thanks for having me on the show today. Yeah, so Steve Hackenberg, I'm a New Yorker that made my way on the West Coast. We did some Amazon time, landed in Seattle, and now I migrated to Canada. I'm a permanent resident living up in Vancouver, British Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah, and the show's a little delayed today. I wanted to let folks know that Steve has to be the bravest guest we've ever had because despite an injury, he was able to make it work. So, Steve, once again, thanks for being able to make it on.
Yeah.
You want to tell folks about your injury, or can we just move past it?
Yeah. We do it really quick. It's not a good story. I was being super dad. I was trying to prevent an injury from my son, and I injured myself. So I broke my hand. Yeah. But
nice.
as a big mountain skier and a snowmobiler, and I do a lot of things that my wife would prefer I don't do.
Yeah.
I don't really have a good story about this injury, unfortunately.
Well, Steve, one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you was because essentially you get to be in the room when a lot of conversations are happening that I'll call them stressful conversations, because it's the equivalent of somebody showing up and there's an Excel spreadsheet and it says millions of dollars and people asking questions about where's that money going and why. Is that a good synopsis?
Oh, that's a great synopsis. I'm talking to CFOs of IT all the time, and the bigger the organization, obviously, the more complexity within your data challenge. But a common question that a CFO gets from his direct report is, who are my top 20 vendors? And that's a mic drop, because the guy's like, that's going to take me months to figure out. If I'm a global organization like a NASDAQ or someone that's buying technology at such a large global scale, they probably have multiple ERP systems, multiple data sources, multiple data teams. It becomes a real big mess of unknown. So when that question gets asked, like, who are my top 10 vendors, it's often crickets, because it's manual and it's hard to do. There's things like OEM parentage, like, who did Dell buy today? Who did Dell divorce today? Like, what is Dell going to sell VMware?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is, like, when you look at some of those charts, right, you're not able to sort out what the spend was. It's just like a trip to Costco. Did you buy a TV or did you buy a rotisserie chicken, right? Like, what's in that receipt? Is that correct?
It's 100%. It's like, hey, I got this bill from, and I love my partners at CDW and SHI and all the VARs, but it's like, hey, I got a $30 million bill with one of these guys, but what do they actually buy? So as the CIO or CFO, I have to go back to one of the VARs and say, hey, Mr. VAR, what did I actually buy off you? Because I have no idea. Right. And the VAR will be like, yeah.
And often this becomes a regular problem in technology organizations, because not only are there procurement vehicles, there's buying contracts, there's ways that, there's sometimes you never want to go direct and procuring things, right? Yeah. Like, you always want to go through a specific vehicle because you get extended payment terms, warranty. Like, there's a whole, like, the lawyers have been very thorough before all of this is set up. And so when you're kind of talking to these organizations, are they always seeking to save? Or are they just more kind of looking to understand? What do you see like being the primary drivers as you're having these IT technology spend discussions?
Sure. I mean, the goal across all organizations I hear right now is cost optimization to drive innovation. Mm-hmm. But to get to that optimization play, you need a blueprint of where and how you're spending your money. So think of CXO Nexus, my company. Think of us as we solve that data challenge that companies have, and we
Right.
provide them with a blueprint on how they can, formulate actionable insights, how to optimize spend, how to reduce resellers, how to consolidate redundant vendors, whatever it might be. But it's essentially we're solving a data problem, because if you
Yeah.
think of the complexity of global organizations, like I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to get your hands around all these different data sources, people's processes, whatever currencies, whatever it might be. So first and foremost, we solve the data problem, and then
Okay.
second, it's the blueprint to your success. Like however you want to drive it. And we don't do any sort of consulting on the data. We just provide really clean, awesome data to our companies, our clients, excuse me, on a monthly cadence. But then I lean on folks like EY and CDW and SHI
Right.
and Rackspace to help navigate those blueprints for
Yeah.
customer success and value creation.
So a lot of ways, like I kind of think of this as a cooking analogy, right? A lot of ways you're providing the ingredients. It's up to, folks, do they want to make chicken pot pie, or are they going for soup, right? Like, just it depends on what they
Yeah,
want out of those investments. Now, a
sure.
lot of things that I remember from having these conversations with leadership. The first area that's kind of interesting is, are they constantly looking for like spend and analytical data, um, real time? Are they looking for it monthly? Are they looking for it quarterly? What's the cadence when they're having these discussions? I've always kind of been fascinated by that. Like, what do they what?
Yeah, great question. I mean, all the ERP systems out there are great, but they don't provide the granularity that many executives need to make, good decisions off the data. So we're accelerating all the ERPs like a Workday, an Ariba, a Coupa, PeopleSoft. Like, we really don't care which ERP, or maybe you've acquired 10 companies and you have 15 different ERPs. We don't really care much about that. I see data being like the biggest driver, and people wanting to work with CXO Nexus is just, I have a lot of data. I spend a lot of money, and like, how do I really wrap my hands around what I'm buying?
Yeah. And then when you're having these review sessions, what are some typical questions that you get from leadership or technology decision makers? What are they peering into? Like, they get the data. What are the next steps for them as they start to look at it? Do you get feedback on that?
Yeah, tons of feedback, and it's like, for example, Viacom CBS is one of our nameable customers, and through multiple acquisitions of Paramount and HBO and their work with streaming media and digital content and such, like, companies like that have a really hard time consolidating all that data due to acquisitions. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I hear time and time again is like, how do I create a single pane of glass where
Okay.
everyone's working off the same data? And that I hear that from small organizations up to the big banks of the world. It's so common. It's so common. It's a challenge that everyone's trying to address right now.
So let me tell you, the name of this video cast is Cloud Stream, and so I do want to ask, like, in the overall kind of cloud area, which I'm just going to guess this has got to be a huge market for you guys, in terms of you're seeing year on year growth. And there's this common saying in the cloud world: once you start on cloud, you keep spending on cloud. It's like our cell phone bills, guys. Like,
That's right.
we're never going to be out there thinking, oh, let me get about 10 gigabytes less of data this month, right? It's just, we keep
Yeah.
looking at them and we're like, all right, well, I just can't turn this thing off since I run my business on it. What have your discussions been? And you've been doing this for a number of years. Over the time frame, have you seen greater, velocity there? What's that looking like?
Yeah, definitely greater velocity. I mean, so when we go into an organization, we say, hey, Mr. CIO, on day one, we want to see multiple years. We want a data dump from multiple years of your vendor spend. Like, don't worry about parsing out technology. We want to take in travel expense and P card because Mr. Amex loves buying AWS. Like, right? Like
Ah,
yeah,
yeah.
we pick that up time and time again. And even though technology is usually category 1 or category 2 for top level of spend in an organization,
Hmm.
cloud just keeps pumping, and it's from my perspective, it's still under 10% of total IT spend,
Right.
but it's growing fast and it's growing heavily, and more folks have realized, like, yeah, having a great cloud provider is great, but we need multiple cloud providers. We need
Hmm.
people that are good in each individual region. We also want to negotiate with AWS and Google and VMware and Oracle and whoever else. Like, so having just that one AWS under my roof isn't doing me maybe all the benefits it could. I'm not saying we love AWS. We're on AWS. Like, I don't have any
Yeah.
bad things to say about AWS, but folks are realizing that the multi-cloud is here to stay.
Yeah.
But we're also seeing organizations say, like, well, crap, like this cloud bill keeps going up and up and up. Like,
Right.
how do we get our hands around this cloud spend? So it's a little bit of push and shove on that side, but companies that aren't adopting cloud, they're not going to be in the Fortune 500s anymore, right? Like,
Yeah.
they might not be around in a few years. Who knows? But
So,
cloud adoption is very important, but it's also very costly.
and then when you're getting into like the granularity around cloud adoption, I mean, I've seen these cloud bills before, right? You've got 1,000 lines for each service, every segment. When you're going through this process of reviewing these bills, how do you help organizations with that? What's kind of your thought process? How do you figure out, oh, well, that's actually related to this application, and or if this is all storage, folks, like what are your
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and like in our product roadmap, someday we hope to get into that greater cloud taxonomy.
okay,
Right now we're currently showing a cash view of your spend. So
okay.
what POs have been cut and what checks have been cut to your cloud
Ah,
providers, and
got it. Nice. Yeah.
yeah,
Balancing
yeah,
the check.
we're exactly. One of my good partners, Rackspace, like I work really closely with the Rackspace team, and I know Rackspace leverages Cloud Health.
Yeah.
And Cloud Health, in a perfect world where we have a million developers and a lot of money,
Yeah.
someday CXO Nexus and Cloud Health will be one together.
Okay.
I'm not saying VMware is going to buy CXO Nexus or vice versa, but we show that great cache view because we're taking in all the data sources. But then Cloud Health brings it to a whole new level of, here's your utilization on each instance, and then it even identifies, like, hey, if you turn this one off during these times, or you're underutilizing this one, you can save X.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at as far as like getting to that granularity within cloud spend. But the
Okay.
cool thing about what we do is, like, we at least enable that initial conversation by taking in all the data sources, making sense of it, and but unfortunately, we're not at that granularity yet. But that's why I rely on my friends at VMware and Rackspace to help me with
Well, thanks for that plug. I love that.
that.
But
Yeah.
I do have some questions around. One of the areas for a lot of clouds is the idea, and well, I think this might be an AWS concept, but the spot market and RIs and that whole shebang. I'm curious if there's a parallel when it comes to overall technology spend. Are there ways that you've seen organizations arbitrage, if you will, technology spend at all? And so that's an interesting concept. I'm not sure if you've seen anything in that area.
Well, an interesting thing that I do see, and I don't know if I'm going to hit your question right on the head, is
Yeah,
because we update our clients' data at the close of month book. So if you think like the first week of a month, we're
yeah,
getting billions and billions of dollars of spend coming into our system. What folks seem to care about is because you have that historical spend trend over time, is well, if I'm investing heavy in cloud and cloud storage and all these cloud things, like why is my legacy on-prem spend still going up at the same rate as my cloud bill? Like
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
they want to
Okay.
see data center facility spend coming down. They want to see on-prem storage and servers coming down because we're utilizing cloud, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so that's been really big in the marketplace lately. Is like why am I still spending so much on-prem if I'm going off-prem?
right. So it's this realization about capex, opex, right? And then
Yep.
the other part of that is there is maybe an unspoken assumption sometimes. Oh, by adopting this, I'm going to reduce that. It's funny because I wonder, in our personal lives, like I wonder when we make that same like shopping assumption, yet it turns out to not be true, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess sometimes I rent videos online, and people have pointed out to me that it's much cheaper to like go get the DVD over at like the Red Box or whatever, and I'm like, that's interesting,
Yeah.
but also that would require me to leave the house. So,
True
um,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. It's like cooking a gourmet meal where you need to buy every spice and herb and
right,
vegetable in the
yeah,
marketplace, or you go down to Whole Foods and they're like, here's your pre-made chicken dinner with all the sides. It's like,
right,
yeah, very
yeah,
similar.
and so I wonder as well, like, do you guys also give customers the detail to be able to compare like their storage costs? And this is another interesting point I just thought of. But so, do you include labor in your analysis when you're looking at this? Is this pure spend? That was kind of
It's yeah.
yeah,
I mean, great question. Everyone's asking us to bring in professional services. Like
yeah,
you see an invoice, it'll be Steve Hackenberg for 100K
right,
with micro focus, and that's all the detail that they're giving the end client. So the
right,
client's like, when we see that type of information, generally we don't have enough data within the invoice or PO to allocate it to a category. So
ah,
we put it into this category that we call multi, because we make zero assumptions on a company's data. We go back to them and say, hey, here's your multi bucket, is $10 million a year. Here are the vendors in multi, and then
yeah,
look at the information you're getting from your vendors. It's actually quite crap. So
yeah,
it offers a process improvement for whoever's buying that to go back to Micro Focus or something
right,
consulting comp and
right,
say, hey, like thanks for the first name, thanks for the total price, but like we want to understand what this spend actually is. And if a client comes, hey Steve, Micro Focus, they're just doing app development, I'll say,
yeah,
hey, Mr. AI model, from now on, this category, this company is going
hmm,
to fall under app development. So we'll train the model to learn that, but
got it.
we need to go back to the customer first and understand that, like, where should this go? Like, we make zero assumptions. Our AI is currently hitting at 97%. So there's 3% that sometimes we need to uncover a little more, and that offers that process improvement, which is really big for organizations.
Yeah, so that's super cool because essentially you're then able to categorize where those dollars are going within the organization. The thing that organization's responsible for, if I understand correctly, is then going back and saying, well, I'm going to assign this to this project so we know what the value is that we're deriving. There was as you were talking, one thing floated to the top of my head around categorization, and that is it sounds like organizations that tag, if you will, are
Yep.
going to be better off. But then I had another question that was one I think our viewers might be interested in, and that's like baselines. So I assume with the magnificent amounts of data that you guys probably have now, that you're able to say to somebody uh, that, hey, your baseline seems way off for this. Is that also true, or do you not
That,
provide?
you nailed it. We're not quite in the predictive AI space yet, where I could say, hey, Sadesh, that pen that you have, I bought for 25 cents cheaper across the street. But
Yeah.
we can say, hey, Mr. CFO, CIO, your
Mhm.
storage spend for being a financial customer, your storage spend is 30% higher than your peers.
Right.
Or
That
your
is
information
bad.
security spend is not nearly what your peers are. Like, so we're
Right.
offering those types of benchmarks currently.
Yeah. That's
But
really,
yeah,
that's really interesting, because a lot of times when we talk to our customers and and have these discussions, they ask exactly that. They say, "Well, what are the other what are the other customers going to do about this, etc." And they want to
sure.
talk to them. Is any of your platform at all social? Does it provide the ability to, say, call a friend or speak to an industry benchmark person, etc.? I'm interested.
No, but I do like that. It'd be like, hey, you can phone a friend, but
I'll put in that
if I
feature request. I'll put that in. So
but if I do have a customer asking something like that, I'll find some cohorts that are willing to
yeah,
speak, and I'll bring them into a conversation and let them sort that out for themselves. That's one of the great things about here at CXO Nexus is we have so many great nameable customers,
yeah,
and a lot of those customers also sit on our advisory board. And a lot of those customers are just willing to go out and tell our story because we're accelerating their time to value. We're taking their people off of data curation and manual work, and we're accelerating their time to value. So
right.
don't spend your time curating data and trying to figure things out. Like, spend your time negotiating. Spend your time on impactful work. So I think that's I think that answers that question. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, we've already hit our 20-minute mark, so I'm just going to ask a couple other questions, so folks kind of get to know you a little bit better. The first one
Yeah, I
is,
love it.
when you're doing when you're not doing amazing financial analysis for these enterprise organizations, what do you do for fun?
You could probably catch me in the air at your local ski resort.
Oh, nice. I like
I
that.
love
Yeah,
hitting cliffs and big jumps. I've been skiing my entire life, and
yeah.
I probably should have been a professional skier, but it pays better to be on the technology side.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And then I always ask folks, what is a like a consumer cloud technology that you absolutely love? What's something that you're passionate about, that you're like, hey, I use this every day? Are you like a Spotify person, or do you have one of those? Is it connected workout device, Pelotons? What is it that you enjoy?
Sure. I'm a big Peloton rider,
Oh, you
and
are? Okay. Well, that's good to
yeah,
know. Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, big Peloton rider.
yeah. So that's a super well connected cloud technology.
It, it's a great platform, and what they've built over there to make you compete against yourself like that. There's nothing else on the marketplace like that, and it's literally if a call cancels, I can
Yeah.
get down to my shorts and go over to my Peloton, which is right next to me, and
Yeah.
get 30 burn. I think my highest is I burn 800 calories in 30 minutes. So you can't beat that, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I just want to thank you for coming on today. Despite your injury, I'm going
No
to
big deal.
award you a gold star. And as you guys continue to understand a little bit more about spend, we certainly want to have you back. Maybe make this like an annual thing. And at some point, I expect to see some kind of report or white paper from CXO Nexus about these benchmarks. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Sorry about I actually got sick last week, so I got a pretty raspy voice and a broken hand. But this has been awesome, Sadesh. I've known you for a long time. I respect everything that you do. You're a
Yeah.
great marketer. You're a great speaker. Thanks for having me. I really do.
Hey, thanks so much, man. Right. Let me hit this.